Welcome to the walkthrough of frequently made mistakes I found during my review of submissions for Assignment 3 in CS253 in fall of 2022. First, please document your code thoroughly. Each aggregate operation should have a comment. As we've discussed before, if you don't comment your code, you won't get a review. Let's take a look at some problems with perform crawl. This particular implementation is far too complicated. All you need to do is call the crawl page async method followed by calling join, which should be the one and only place you call join in the program. Here's another problem with perform crawl. Don't increment the depth field here. That needs to be performed elsewhere. It needs to be performed further down below in one of the other methods. Let's now go ahead and turn our attention to crawl page async. Please use M0 here. That's why it's defined as a field. Yet another set of problems with crawl page async. First, there's a condition that's missing in this filter call. Secondly, the terminal operation is incorrect. And third, don't return null. Make sure you return the appropriate completable future. Let's now turn our attention to some problems with crawl page helper. First, this method is being called incorrectly here. Don't call crawl page async. There's a different helper method you need to call instead. Secondly, don't be calling get page async here. Just call that method once first before you do anything else, store it in a local variable, and then make sure you pass it to the methods that are called afterwards so that they both get a chance to work off the same completable future that came back from the get page async call. Yet another set of problems with the crawl page helper. You don't need to have a try catch block here. Likewise, as we talked about before, don't call get page async twice, just call it once and store the result into a local variable of type completable future. And also make sure that you're calling the helper method here, not the then compose method directly, which is incorrect, by the way. And then secondly, don't be calling the helper method here, call the helper method here, don't call the then compose method directly. I think that's also wrong too. And this is very important. You're missing something important here with the depth parameter. So make sure you look carefully at the output from your tests to see why you're getting errors and then correct them. Let's take a look at get images on page async. As always, please get in the habit of using method references instead of lambda expressions. Both of these calls here should be done with method references. Here's the get page async method. This is incorrect because the wrong method is being called here. This is inconsistent with the specification comment above, which asks you to use the appropriate factory method. Completed future is not a factory method, and it won't run the computations in the background. Let's now turn our attention to combine results. Don't use the then combine async method here. You just want to use then combine. And please use a method reference here instead of a lambda expression. There's a method reference that works nicely if you're trying to sum two integers together. Now let's turn our attention to process images. Once again, make sure you use a method reference here instead of a lambda expression. That goes for all these places where you're making calls that can be replaced simply by using the Android Studio IDE to do that replacement for you automatically. Let's take a look at crawl hyperlinks on page. A number of people were getting very strange mistakes because they forgot to pass the right parameter here. You need to pass the right parameter. And this is also calling the wrong method. You don't want to be calling get page elements as strings. Read the specification above and you'll see what you're supposed to call. And if you do that correctly, you don't need to call .stream here. And then down here, you don't want to be doing reduce. Instead, you want to be using int stream sum as a method reference. Now let's take a look at problems with transform image async. This code is incorrect and incomplete because it's not implementing the specification comment above properly. In particular, you need to use the mtransforms list and convert it into a stream and then do these types of computations at that point. So that's important to fix. Same sort of problem here. You need to call mtransforms.stream.map at the outer level and then integrate this code correctly. And I should also hasten to note, never call join here. If you recall, join is only intended to be called in one place, and that's at the beginning in the perform crawl method. And then finally, here's a problem with the transform image method. Please use a consistent Fluent interface style of programming. Don't create a separate local variable, but instead chain everything together. And there's something important that's missing here. You're not calling a method, so this code will be wrong. I guess one of the key things you need to do is make sure that you're running the unit tests. A lot of people don't seem to be running the unit tests, and so they have all these crazy errors, including compile errors. Henceforth, if you don't run the unit tests, and by that I mean run the grader, we simply won't review your code. So it's your responsibility to make sure that you're running these tests and that you understand what the problems are. And even more importantly, that you're coming to office hours or you're going on Piazza to get help for problems that you have in your code.